Yes, our God is a mountain mover, and you know what? He's still moving mountains every day. And the good news is He can move your mountains too. Hi there, this is Chuck Cooper, host of It's a God Thing radio program. Thank you for joining us today. We sure are glad you're here. You're about to listen to some awesome interviews with believers in Jesus Christ who will tell you how God has revealed and proved Himself to them by moving mountains they were unable to move by themselves. They say that their stories can only be described as a God thing. Ready for a real blessing? Alrighty then, let's do this God thing.
In order to protect her privacy, our guest today is known only as Sabrina. We are truly honored and privileged that Sabrina chose our program to publicly share for the very first time her almost unbelievable story with us. Just so you know, I have personally seen the documents to prove her story, and I also have seen the tears, the trembling lips, and the sniffles to reinforce what she's revealing. Sabrina, we want to thank you, and we really, really appreciate you sharing this story for the very first time, I understand,
Yes.
Publicly.
That's true.
So thank you very much. Tell us your story.
Okay. I was 15 years old and I became pregnant. My parents were not supportive. My father was very upset, to say the least. He had high standards for myself, and I was raised in a Christian family. My parents, I went to church. The foundation was there, but I chose to make my own path. And once my father found out that I was pregnant, he decided that it would be in the best interest of the family that if I was sent away to an unwed mother's home. So
that's what they did in those days.
That's what they did. And so I was sent away to a home where I lived until I gave birth. And then once I gave birth to a baby boy, they took him away right away. I only got a glance of him.
You didn't get to hold him?
No. They didn't let me hold him.
Oh, my God.
Didn't let me name him.
Oh, my.
You know how they take pictures after birth at a hospital? There was never no pictures taken. Because it was going through an adoption agency, I was not allowed any cursory information at all. During my stay at the home, one of the ladies that worked for Children's Home Society, Mrs. Buckner, I'll never forget her name, she would come by and check on me every once in a while. I had threatened to run away from the home several times. Yeah. I was not happy. I knew what was forthcoming. I knew I was going to have to give my child up. So it was hard for me. But I had...
Now, did you agree to give your child up, Sabrina?
I didn't want to. I fought it as much as I possibly could, but my parents, mainly my father, was not going to accept the fact that I had a child out of wedlock.
Oh, wow.
And that it would be detrimental to him.
Mm-hmm.
And he didn't think it was fair that anybody else in the family had to raise a child.
Oh, wow.
And so he put his foot down, and I didn't have a choice. Had nowhere to go. I was 15 years old.
Right.
Of course, no finances available. So I was kind of in a rock and a hard spot. Plus, I was sent away to in Jacksonville, Florida, where I had no clue. I didn't know anyone. So I stuck it out. Mm-hmm. And like I said, once I gave birth to him, he was taken away. I won't never forget the blue eyes and the curly blonde hair, and how much he weighed, and all those important things.
Sure.
I even remember what room number I was in.
Wow.
But I continued to live life like I wanted to. I kept doing what I wanted to do. I knew...
Did you stay in Jacksonville, or...?
No, I went back home.
Okay.
For a short period of time because I was
And lived
defiant.
with your parents then?
Mm-hmm. I was defiant. I was upset. I was mad at the world. My dad, who I was his baby, turned out not to be so. It was devastating for me. So I continued to sneak out of the house and do things I shouldn't do. And I ran off with the dad that was 11 years older than me and got pregnant again. I was hit by a car walking down the road, and I suffered a lot of injuries, nothing serious. We didn't think at the time. Mm-hmm. And then once I gave birth, her name was Kelly, she only lived 3 days. She had a massive brain hemorrhage. And
because of the accident, you think?
They attributed it to the accident. It just wasn't, according to all the doctors, she was healthy, everything was okay. The gentleman that hit me thought I was a deer. I did have on a long coat, And it was late and dark.
Yeah.
And I was walking to the payphone to call my mom because we were shy on groceries.
Yeah.
And I got hit. But anyway, that's okay. I got past that, lived through that. But that made me angrier with God and my dad. I just felt like, okay, I had a perfectly normal, healthy child, and he's taken away from me. And now I have another child that's taken away from me. And for something, I didn't do this. You know, I didn't ask for this.
Right.
So I was devastated once again.
And you walked away from the Lord then?
I did. I was done.
Angry at him?
I was angry at him. Very angry at him. I felt like it was between him and my dad. It was both of their fault. My mother was in a situation where she had no say-so. My dad was the ruler of the house, and that's just the way it was.
You had no thought of perhaps you had contributed to what was going on?
Oh, not at that time.
Oh, okay.
Oh, no. It was everybody else's fault.
Oh, okay. And
it was everybody else's fault for years to come. It was still everybody else's fault. No, I didn't take any responsibility at all. So not until I got older.
Sure.
And realized that...
That's the thing of youth. All of us are like that at some point.
I agree. And after raising my children, I see how it happens.
Yes, I bet you do.
Oh yes, but
so now your son was adopted. Is that correct?
He was adopted, and the lady with the adoption agency reassured me, because when I had to go down there and sign the final paperwork, I couldn't do it. I was falling completely apart. My dad signed for me because I was underage.
Right.
And now I realize at that time I was not prepared to raise a child. But in my mind, I would have done what I had to do to raise him. You know, if nothing else, he'd have had much love, and been raised the best way I could.
That's the mother nurturing.
Right.
It's inherent with females,
right.
Moms.
Yep. But anyway...
so you didn't know where he was?
Oh, no.
You lost track of him?
Well, no, I wasn't allowed to know.
Oh, okay.
The adoption agency only gave me very minimum information about his adoptive parents. I knew that the adoptive father was some type of engineer in Orlando, and I knew that the mother was in some banking facility or somewhere. I knew that they were a Protestant faith. That's about all I knew.
No names?
No names, absolutely no names. 6'1", brown hair, that kind of thing, but nothing that would give me any clue who may have adopted him. And in Orlando, even then was a good sized city. There's no telling where he would have been. Wherever we went, I would look.
Sabrina, how were holidays for you?
Not good. Not good. Birthdays was hard.
Oh, bad.
And holidays was bad. I wondered, if he got a Christmas, if he was in a good home, because I had heard so many negative things about adoptions, and I had joined several groups online. Big Hugs was one of them, where I read testimonies of people that had been adopted, and some of the stories were horrifying. It made me wonder, what kind of environment he was in. Was he safe? Was he not safe? You wonder. You can't help but wonder. So it made it difficult for me, and I eventually tried not to think about it anymore. I said...
Were you successful with that?
No. But I did go on with my life.
Sure. You had no choice.
Yep. Had more children. But when I had my other children, they were well aware that there was a son that had been put up for adoption, and that hopefully I would find him one day. And so I didn't hide anything from my children. I wanted them to know that they had a brother somewhere.
Right. How long did this go on?
Years.
Years?
Years.
You've got a great ending to the story. I see that coming. So tell us what you did to try to find him.
Well, I did several things. I kept in contact with the Children's Home Society, where he was adopted through. Although they wouldn't give me any information, they did keep any medical information that I would give them that I wanted passed along to the family, that kind of thing. of course, I couldn't find out still who had him or where he was. My mother joined in helping me find him. Once her and my father were divorced, she decided that she wanted to help me, and so we both searched. And we got online once the internet became popular, and we did everything possible to try to find him, to no avail. So I kind of just put it down to the side and said, I guess it's just not meant for me to know. Maybe there's a reason. And I rededicated my life in 1996 to the Lord. I had not been living for the Lord at that time.
Why did you do that?
I don't really know why I did it. I was just searching at that time for answers. I just needed, I was going through some other things in my life as well. Things were not good for me. And so I said, well, nobody else hears me. Maybe he will. And so I knew I needed to get my life back on track. I knew.
Did that understanding, Sabrina, was that a result of your Christian family, you think?
I do. I do believe that if I hadn't been involved in the church when I was young, if my mother hadn't had come in every Sunday morning and demanded that I get dressed to go to Sunday school and to church, yes, even though I was resistant, I didn't want to go. And but I think if my mom had not pushed me, got me in the church as a child, and I also feel like that if my mom, to this other than the Lord Himself, she's my rock. She's strong. She's a strong Christian woman, and she has a lot of faith.
That's how you learned to be a good mother.
That's it.
Okay, so you got saved, or you rededicated your life to Christ?
Yes, I did. I actually, it was a little bit of both, I think. Okay. I thought I was saved before, but like I said, I was not walking the path. I was doing what I wanted, what Sabrina wanted to do, and I didn't care what anybody else said.
Sure.
And then again, in 2003, I decided that I really wasn't living for the Lord like I should be. I made some more changes and changed some other habits that I had and some things that I was doing that I shouldn't have been doing as a Christian. And so I said, okay, all right, I get the picture now. I'm gonna behave. I'm gonna do what I'm supposed to do. So I started I started taking my children to church, making sure we went to church.
Dragging him out of bed on Sunday morning, right? Turn around's fair play, Sabrina.
Yes. We started having prayer meetings. My children saw me reading out of my Bible, things that I never did before. I was not a big prayer warrior. I would ask for things from God, and if He didn't give it to me, then I would be mad. And then my life started really turning around because, as I said, I was in a struggling place. There was times when we didn't have much to eat, and I'd go out to the mailbox, and there'd be a check from my grandmother for $50 or $100. Or from my mom for $100. I went to work at a company, and it was some 35 miles away, and it was a good job, but I didn't have the transportation, and I prayed about it, and my dad loaned me his extra vehicle for a little while, and one day I walked out in the front yard, and my mom was pulling up with a car.
Wow.
Yep. So, anyway, back to the story. So I've been blessed many times in my life since I decided that, I need to do the right thing. But I searched, and I searched, and I searched. And like I said, I quit for a while. And then one day, for the first time in my life, I physically got on my knees. And I just said, God, if there's a way, please show me a way for me to find this child. I got to know. He was not a child at that time.
Right.
He was probably 30 years old at that time when I got on my knees. And
now, Sabrina, you'd been praying for him before.
Oh, yes.
You've been praying
many years. Yes.
And then, as a last resort, you got on your knees?
Yes, as a last resort. I had done everything I thought I knew. I had changed my life. I had started making sure that my children knew about Jesus, knew about God. I started trying to live for the Lord and stop living for what I wanted.
Right.
and what I wanted to do. And so, yes, I had prayed for many, many times, but it's the first time I ever really physically got on my knees and said, I can't take no more. I can't find my son. I'm struggling. I don't know where my children's next meal is going to come from. I was too proud to go ask for any help from anyone. I never would have taken any kind of assistance because I was too proud.
Right.
And I didn't ask the church for anything. I never said a word. I just said, we'll get through this some way. And we did. The Lord provided a way. When I didn't have any groceries, there's a check in the mailbox.
Sure.
But the Lord answered my prayer. And it was like He had opened the heavens up and looked me in my face and said, Sabrina, your dad's a pilot. Your brother was a pilot. Your brother loves airplanes. My grandfather was in the Air Force. You're surrounded by people that love airplanes. So, look, search for him. And I thought, oh boy, here we go. Because I had thought of everything before.
Right.
That is the last thing I would have thought about is an airplane, so.
Now, how long was this after you got on your knees and prayed, Sabrina?
It wasn't right away.
Mm-hmm.
The next morning I felt like I knew the answers to everything. And so I was back searching again, but not about the airplanes yet,
right.
And then He came to me and said, it's the airplanes. The airplanes is your key. But I got on the computer and I started searching. And I started going to every website I could find that had anything to do with airplanes. And I ran across, and I knew to search the Orlando area because I knew that's where he was adopted.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't know that they were still living there.
Right.
But I did search there first. And I found this website that had members' profile pictures along with their name and an email address. No other contact information. And I'm scanning through the pictures and thinking this is a waste of time. But all of a sudden, I clicked on this picture, and I had to blow the picture up to look in his face. I said, this is my son. Wow. I know this is my son.
Wow.
So I picked up the phone and called my mom right away. I said, Mom, I think I found my son. She said, are you sure? And I said, yeah, Mom, I'm telling you this is him. She said, well, praise God. Send me the picture and let's verify it. Make sure.
Yeah.
I said, okay. So I sent her the information. My mom called me right back, and she said, you know what? I think you're right. I think that's him.
Now, accompanying the picture was an email address.
Yes.
That came
and
out.
His name.
Oh, and his name. That's the first time you knew his name?
I didn't know his name because I wasn't allowed to name him.
That's right.
So his name was Andrew.
And
had, of course, totally different last name.
Yeah.
So
you used that email.
I used that email. And I started sending emails and no response. And I thought, geez, come on. I know this is him.
Yeah.
And his email, I can't remember exactly, but it was something about Sky Pilot or something similar to that. And I just kept sending emails and no response. And saying I'm a mother, and I had to put my son. I was spilling out my heart to an empty mailbox that wasn't responding.
How long did that go on?
About 3 months, I think it was.
Wow.
Yeah, that he didn't respond, and
it had to be heartbreaking.
It was. I thought, well, maybe he doesn't want to answer. Maybe he wishes I'd go away.
Maybe you didn't get him.
Yeah. So I got on Facebook and I started searching for his name, and I found a name just like his. Exact first, middle, and last. He was about the same age my son should have been. I asked for a friend request and there was no picture of him. So it was accepted. And I said, I am looking for Andrew and his last name. I am his biological mother. Are you this person? And he responded back, I'm so sorry to inform you, but I'm not. My parents, I was born in West Virginia somewhere or something,
Right.
So it wasn't him. So that was disappointing. So I went back to where I needed to be, and I prayed again, Lord, please, just let him say, I don't want to be bothered with you or anything. I would have taken anything. Just Say something.
But you needed to know.
I needed that answered.
Right.
So the Lord said, it'll happen. It'll happen. Give it some time.
Wow.
So I said, okay. And I'm not going to worry about it. So I quit checking my email box. I would check it every week or so instead of every day. I'm on there looking,
right.
you know. So I check it every week or two. And all of a sudden, I get this email back. And it said, I very rarely check this email. I have this email with me. I just saw your emails to me. He said, I don't use this account anymore.
Well, that's why he didn't respond.
That's why he didn't respond.
Praise the Lord.
And then said a few things that, you know, I don't know how receptive I'll be with this, you know. So he had some concerns.
Well, this was a shock to him.
He had some doubts, some serious doubts.
Sure. So he was a little bit reluctant and had some doubts about who you were.
Oh, yes.
Did he come right out and say, I don't believe you're my mother?
He didn't come right out and say that, but he wanted information. No, actually, he's not a pilot.
Oh, he wasn't a pilot?
No. But he loved airplanes and radio, remote-controlled airplanes.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And actually had gone to the Air Force Academy, but had injured his knee, so he couldn't pursue his Air Force. Mm-hmm. It was kind of strange that it was Air Force because my youngest son is also in the Air Force. But we started emailing just a little bit, and then he picked up the phone and called me. To hear his voice was like, oh my gosh, I'm talking, you know, he was 35. So for 35 years, you know. So it was very emotional.
I bet.
He realized after I had given him all the information about where he was born, what time, how much he weighed, everything, the length, I knew everything.
It coincided with what his adopted parents had
Yeah, he knew he was adopted.
Yes.
And his adoptive parents, which are wonderful, strong Christian people, offered to help him search for me many times, and he chose not to. And I understand that. I didn't hold any ill will against him. And he certainly doesn't hold any ill will against me because he said, you know, it was a very selfishless act for you to give me up for adoption because you had other choices that you could have made, and I wouldn't be here today.
Right.
And I said, that's true. That was an option. But I chose not to do that.
When did you know that he knew that he was in fact your son?
When he called.
When he called? So he knew, he felt like at that time
that
the correspondence that you had set this up and had convinced him. The facts that you were able to prove to him with no doubts.
He said, in the email, he said, I don't see how it could be possible that someone gave birth at the same time, the same day, the same hospital, and not be anybody else but my mom.
Yes.
And he still was even a little bit reluctant after that. You know, he said, you know, I haven't mentioned this to my family. I haven't mentioned this to my adoptive parents. I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. I have to make sure, without a doubt, that you are my biological mother. And I told him I didn't blame him. I said, take your time. Don't tell your children if you don't want to. I said, you don't have to tell your children if you don't want to tell them. I just wanted to touch base and let you know the circumstances surrounding the adoption. I wanted you to know it wasn't because you wasn't loved. I said, I just wanted to give you some peace of mind, and as well, in return, I can have some peace of mind. And I said, if it wasn't for God, I'd have never found you. I still in my heart believe that it was all answered to prayers.
Right.
It was all answered to prayers. Because all those years that I didn't pray, there was nothing. I couldn't find anything. I couldn't get any answers from anybody. And
now you knew.
Now I knew.
Okay, now there had to be a point following that phone call, that y'all agreed to meet.
We did.
Tell us about that.
We agreed to meet. We conversated a lot on the phone, but mostly by email after that point because he's a professional. He's got a business, and he can't be on the phone all the time because we were talking nonstop.
Yes.
You know, about everything from what we like in music to the children and all these things. After we found out for sure.
So by that time, Sabrina, he knew that you were his mother.
Oh yes.
And he was curious.
He wanted
about
to know.
you, and he wanted to get to know you.
He wanted to know. He wanted to know what I liked in school, and I told him, well, my favorite subject was math. He texted, emailed back and said, wow, there's so many things between you and I that are the same, because I was into chess. He was into chess. I was a math person. He was I loved algebra and calculus, and a lot of people struggle with that, but I loved it, and he did too. So there was a lot of common ground there.
So tell me about your first meeting.
Well, we decided that we were going to meet at a common ground. I was very nervous about bringing him to my house. So I said, well, the best place is my mom, which is here. Get to meet my mother, and my grandmother is still living, and at that time, you don't ever know. And I wanted him because he had told me if he had any relatives, sisters, brothers, aunts, uncles, grandmothers, he wanted to meet them.
Sure.
And I wanted to make sure he got to meet my grandmother. So he was already at my mom's house. And when I pulled up the driveway to come out the door, I just melted.
I bet.
I did. I melted in his arms, and we hugged each other for a very long time. Then we went inside and we sat down and talked and looked at pictures, and I showed him pictures of his siblings and told him a little bit about my life and what I had been through, and he told me a little bit about his, but it was a good feeling.
So what is your relationship now?
Good. He told me I can't tell my children right away. I don't want to hurt my adoptive parents, blah, 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 blah. Once we met, things changed.
I bet.
The next thing I know, my grandchildren are here.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So he told them.
Oh, gee. Well, obviously.
Yeah. That was, I just don't know what to say. That was just, I don't know, it was a different time. Matter of fact, when he came with the children, and his wife, the family, came up to see me, I had been sick, and I was a lot sicker than I thought I was. But I would not leave. I stayed at home against my mom's advice because she kept checking on me and I was getting worse. And while he was there with my grandchildren, the first time I'd ever met them, I wanted to be able to go places and do things with them, but I couldn't because I was in a lot of pain. While he was here, my mom came over and she said, I can't look at you no more like this. You're hurting so bad. But I didn't want to go because he was there and my grandchildren were there. So my mom took me to the hospital, and the next thing I know, I'm 2.5 weeks in intensive care with a blood clot that was all the way up.
Oh my gosh.
From my calf of my leg to my stomach. And they really didn't know if I was going to make it or not.
Oh my God.
So several surgeries later, I looked up and my mom was standing over me. My mom and my stepfather, praying that God spare me. That I had a purpose. And came out of it. I came out of it. I went straight from intensive care home.
Wow.
2.5 weeks later, but I did, I recovered remarkably. They couldn't believe it. They didn't expect that to happen.
Well, not only was it God, but it was your will.
Yeah, I wanted to be a part
Sure.
of my son's life and my grandchildren's life. And his
you
wife is a lovely, lovely lady. She's done a really remarkable job with those girls. She's a good mother. I wanted to be a part of their life so bad.
And now you are.
Now I am.
What an amazing story. I don't want to cut you off, Sabrina, but is there something else you wanted to say about this?
The only other thing I know to say is I thank God. He opened a lot of doors for me in my life. Mm-hmm. More than once. He's got me through the storm. And now I'm reaping all the rewards. I get to see my son's coming home for Christmas. My son in the Air Force is coming home for Christmas. So, my daughter's going to, I'm ecstatic. I'm ecstatic. So I thank God for the whole way.
Well, I think I know the answer, but I've got one final question for you, Sabrina. Do you think that the pain that you went through made you a better person eventually?
Oh, yes.
More reliant upon God?
Yes.
And that once he knew that you were reliant on him, that he orchestrated all these events and allowed you to find your son?
That's exactly right.
Sabrina, would you call all that a God thing?
Oh, yeah. That's a God thing.
Thank you, Sabrina.
You're welcome.
Wow, what a great half hour this has been. Tune in next time for more great God Thing stories, and tell all your friends to tune in too. Oh yeah, one more thing. If you or someone you know has a verifiable story which needs to be told, please email a brief summary to us at mystory@itsagodthingradio.com. That's my story, all one word, at itsagodthingradio.com. See you next time.